Dawn found Kenji already awake. Beside the reinforced steel, he drew a well plan into the sand with a bone stylus, then erased the first line because Hope still had to obey gravity. The first version failed before he finished it. The basin wall would slump, the seep would choke, and the desert would call that a lesson. He marked the slope again, shallow enough to hold, steep enough to move water. Civil engineering, reduced to scratches and salt dust. At the edge of the diagram, he wrote one word in charcoal. Well, not miracle, not prayer. Well, he walked the toxic rim slowly, reading cracks the way other men read scripture. Every fracture told him where the basin wanted to fail. The sunken eye looked still from a distance. Up close, it shifted grain by grain, stone by stone, always trying to undo him. Kenji crouched and pressed 2 fingers to the salt crust. The surface gave a little. Too much weight there, and the wall would shear. He smiled without warmth. The oasis had not become safe. It had simply started explaining how dangerous it was. The stone chisel bit into the basin lip. One channel, no wider than his thumb, became the first argument against stagnant water. Chip by chip, he cut a path for flow. The sound was small, almost insulting, but it carried across the empty basin. His wrist cramped. He changed angle, changed grip, changed breathing. The channel did not care about pain. It cared about slope. By noon, the groove caught light from one end to the other. It was ugly. It was straight. It would do. He layered gravel first, then scrub fiber, then finer sand. Not a filter worthy of a city, but enough to teach dirty water restraint. Each layer had a job. Stones slowed the surge. Fiber caught the floating rot. Sand made patience visible. When the water touched the first bed, it hesitated as if offended. Kenji watched every seep with the suspicion of a man who had survived optimism. The filter bed settled unevenly. He took it apart and rebuilt it because survival had no tolerance for pretty mistakes. He widened the collection pool with the stone chisel, careful not to break the lip he had just made. Bigger was useless if it collapsed. Dust stuck to sweat on his arms. Blood dried along the knuckles. The pool widened anyway. The new basin caught a handspan more water. A handspan in Tokyo meant nothing. Here, it meant another day. When he finished, the collection pool looked like a child's toy carved by a starving man. Kenji nodded at it, as if it were a municipal reservoir. His skin peeled under the tunic. The sun had taken its tax in layers, and the desert never issued receipts. He wove the fabric thicker across his shoulders, slow loop over slow loop. Armor in Terra began as shade. The new tunic scratched. Good. Scratching meant fiber. Fiber meant cover. Cover meant the next hour was not guaranteed to kill him. By evening, the cloth sat heavier on his back. It was not comfort. It was a boundary between his body and the sky. In a band of pale desert stone, he found ash locked inside the grain. Volcanic. Fine. Familiar in the way useful things sometimes are. Kenji scraped a little free and rubbed it between his fingers. The powder clung. The old world had called that a material property. Pozzolanic, he whispered. The word tasted absurd in an empty desert, and then it tasted like walls. He did not cheer. Discovery was not victory. Discovery was a debt. Now he had to prove it. Ash, water, crushed stone. He mixed them on a flat slab until the paste darkened and resisted the stick. The first batch cracked. He broke it apart without ceremony. A failed test was still a test. The second held shape longer. The third took a thumbprint and kept it. Kenji stared until the implication became impossible to ignore. Concrete was not here yet, but its shadow was. And shadows, he had learned, could be built under. Structural sight washed blue over the stone. Lines of load, grains of ash, pockets of weakness. The world became an engineer's confession. The system did not hand him an answer. It translated evidence. Kenji still had to think. He followed the glowing stress lines across the basin wall. Red meant crack, green meant hold, blue meant water wanted passage. For the first time since exile, the land was not only a sentence. It was a drawing waiting for correction. Stone struck stone. The hammer rhythm crossed the empty oasis and returned thinner, lonelier, unchanged. No crew answered. No supervisor asked for estimates. No city thanked him in advance and forgot him after. Kenji raised the hammer again. The echo came back. He accepted it as the only applause available. By dusk, the rhythm had become a second heartbeat for the basin. Strike, breathe, measure, strike. He reinforced the first wall section with packed stone and ash paste, pressing every seam by hand. The wall did not become strong all at once. It became less likely to fail, one ugly patch at a time. From above, the work looked small against the sunken eye. From the ground, it was the difference between a basin and a grave. Kenji leaned his weight against the repair and waited. The wall held. He allowed himself exactly one breath of satisfaction. The first filtered seep appeared after sunset. Still murky, still mean, but moving through the bed instead of around it. He cupped it, smelled sulfur, and did not drink. Progress could still poison you if you celebrated too early. The seep ran for 12 seconds before choking. Kenji counted all 12 as if they were coin. He cleared the blockage by touch in the dark. When the water moved again, the sound was almost gentle. Charcoal marks crawled across the stone beside him. Time, volume, loss, recovery. A city's future began as tally lines. The numbers were bad. They were also numbers, and numbers could be improved. He changed one layer, waited, marked again. The flow rose by less than a cup. He marked that too. By the fourth measurement, the pattern appeared. Not enough for comfort, enough for strategy. At midday, he retreated into the shade bay and worked from there, jaw tight against the heat. The shade did not make the desert kind. It made labor possible without immediately turning into a funeral. He dragged tools in and out of the shadow, rationing movement the way he rationed water. Every task became two tasks: build the thing, then survive having built it. The flashback came with the smell of old coffee and printer toner. Section C, lay under a Tokyo lamp, still wrong by 0.3 degrees. In the memory, his pen hovered over the correction. Tomorrow, he had thought. Tomorrow was a word the dead used badly. The office clock ticked. The drainage plan waited. Kenji watched his past self choose delay and hated how human it looked. He woke before the memory could become an apology. The desert did not care what he regretted. It cared what he fixed. His hands were on stone when he opened his eyes. Not desk, not paper, real weight under both palms. For a moment, he could not tell whether he had escaped the nightmare or brought it with him. Then the basin clicked, a tiny, settling sound in the dark. Work called his name more clearly than any god had. Kenji stood. His hands shook. He wrapped them tighter and went back to the wall. The next morning, he returned to work with his jaw set. No vow, no speech, just the first stone lifted. Pain had become background noise. Fear had become data. The only thing left to decide was where the next piece belonged. He placed it, tested it, pulled it free, and placed it again. Pride could wait. Alignment could not. By the time the sun cleared the rim, Kenji had stopped asking whether he was strong enough. The wall was answering. At last, the filter bed completed its first real cycle. Sediment caught. Flow held. The trap did what it was made to do. Dirty water entered one side. Less dirty water left the other. It was not purity. It was civilization learning to crawl. Kenji watched the sediment settle in its own chamber and felt a tired respect for simple systems that kept their promises. The basin had a throat now, and the throat did not choke. He marked the stone, active. The blue interface shimmered above the work site. Architect Progress climbed toward 4, indifferent to blood, sunburn, and sleep debt. Kenji stared at the numbers until they stopped feeling like a reward and started feeling like a warning. Level 4 meant more plans. More plans meant more work. He almost laughed. The system called it advancement. Kenji called it a larger list of things that could kill him if built wrong. That night, a hammering sound crossed the basin. Too steady for wind. Too deliberate for settling stone. Kenji froze in the shade bay, one hand on the stone knife, listening as the sound came again. Beyond the salt rim, darkness held its breath. Something out there was working too. Bone and stone had given Kenji walls flow and one more day. Then the night answered with a rhythm that was not his.